Let's turn to 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 1 through 7. You'll find a portion of it on the front of your program. Thank you, Megan, for sharing that. Awesome. First Peter chapter 3, verses 1 through 7. Wives, raise your hand. Want to be wives, raise your hands. Okay. Wives, in the same way, be submissive to your husbands, so that if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of their wives, when they see the purity and reverence of your lives. Notice it does not say go out and marry a lost man and try to get him saved. It does not say that at all. Missionary dating is not a scriptural thing. Go to verse 3. Your beauty should not come from outward adornment, such as braided hair and wearing of gold and jewelry and fine clothes. Instead, it should be that of the inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. For this is the way the holy women of the past, who put their hope in God, used to make themselves beautiful. They were submissive to their own husbands, like Sarah, who obeyed Abraham and called him her master. You are her daughters if you do what is right and do not give way to fear. The line I want you to really underscore here is, husbands, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives and treat them with respect as the weaker partner and their heirs with you to the gracious gift of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers. Up front, know that there's nothing wrong with braiding your hair and looking pretty and primping up and fixing. What it's saying is that those things do not compare with the inner woman, the woman who is on the inside. I tell my sons, you may find a beautiful, beautiful woman, but remember, in 50 years, when all that is gone, you're going to be left sitting in a rocking chair beside what was on the inside. Beauty fades, amen? Come on now. Y'all going to lie to me this morning? I looked in the mirror this morning. I'm not as beautiful as I used to be. Now you laugh, right? Go to James chapter 3. James chapter 3, a scripture we used last week. We're tying these together. Language and the way we talk and the words we use can affect your marriage drastically, to the point that he or she may leave you and never come back. Words are important. James chapter 3, starting at verse 1. Not many of you should presume to be teachers, my brothers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. We all stumble in many ways. If anyone is never at fault in what he says, he is a perfect man, able to keep his whole body in check. Okay, all you perfect men, raise your hands. I thought so. When we put bits in the horses, when we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they're so large and driven by strong winds, they are steered by a small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boast. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue is also a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole person. It sets on course the whole course of life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. Tongue sounds like a dangerous thing, doesn't it? You bet it is. Verse 7. All kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and creatures of the sea are being tamed and have been tamed by man. But no man can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse men who have been made in God's image. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? My brothers, can a fig tree bear olives, or a grapevine bear figs? Neither can a salt spring produce fresh water. Watch what you say. This is part 2 of last week. We talked about sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. It's a lie straight from the pit. Sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will end your marriage. Words will end your relationship with your children and with your parents. Now, in high school, I did not have many friends. I know that's hard to comprehend. I had a huge vocabulary, had a sharp wit, and I was the master of sarcasm. I would cut anyone down to size. Anybody came in my path, I use words as a weapon, so I have a respect for them. And then I met Samantha in college. She's quiet, shy, compassionate, and no match for my sarcasm. We're kind of like opposite ends of the spectrum. And I would never hurt her on purpose, but I could easily hurt her by accident, just being myself, saying the things I say. Even today, I could let loose just a few sentences and destroy the love and trust that took 26 years to build. Words are powerful. Your tongue can dig your grave. Now, she and I don't have differences very often anymore, but when we do, I will often go silent. Why is that? She knows to leave me alone for a while when I get quiet. The reason is I'm keeping my gun in the holster so I don't shoot the one that I love more than anyone but Jesus. And that is her. All I got to do is say the words, and you can do irreparable damage. You cannot take a word back. Once spoken, it is out there. After a while, she'll come around, we'll talk, we'll work things out. And remember that everything here on earth is just a shadow of what's in heaven. And here we see through a glass dimly, but then we'll see face to face. Marriage between a man and woman is symbolic of the relationship between Jesus Christ and his church. He did this, not me. We are the bride and he is the groom. And if you and Jesus are having a difference of opinion, you can bet that your relationship with him is not all that it could be. We're told that here in 1 Peter. It says, strife with your wife stops your prayers, hinders your prayers. What does it mean to hinder, Becca? To keep from doing something, to hold back, means to hinder. And strife with your wife or your husband is going to hinder your prayers. You and your wife aren't at peace with each other, don't bother praying. It's not going to get past the ceiling. Now, Samantha and I agreed long ago to never go to sleep while we're angry at each other. We get involved in a conflict, we stay awake and work it out before we go to bed. Because after you sleep on it, does it get better for the next day? No. It gets worse. You get anger and you get resentment and it turns to bitterness and you think of ways to not be nice anymore. This will destroy your marriage. That'll cut off your access to God. Now, the relationships between wives and mother-in-laws is legendary. I mean, we've got movies and books written about this. It's usually a fierce competition. But early in our marriage, when we would visit my home, Samantha would go to the kitchen where my mother was cooking, spend the whole day there trying to learn to cook what I liked. Now, to me, that's some kind of woman to go and try to do that. Not only do you have to go in there with the mother-in-law, you have to, learn at her knee. Now, if you come to eat at my house, which hopefully you all will sometime, you'll be served Southern sweet tea. Now, of late, it's not real sugar anymore. We're using artificial sweeteners so that, I won't make my third trimester. But the tea is wonderful. And for me, you have to sweeten the tea when it's hot. You go to a restaurant and say, I'd like sweet tea. They say, well, we got tea and we got sugar. It's not the same. You take cold tea and try to dissolve the sugar. Not the same at all. The sugar has to be added while the tea is warm, fresh off the stove. Not only that, to be its best, you need to sit it in the refrigerator all night so that it develops a full flavor for the next day. Thanksgiving, my mother normally makes the tea on Tuesday and puts about, several gallons so it'll be nice and ripe for Thanksgiving Day. I always look forward to that. It's kind of like fine wine. Tea making is an art. And freshly made tea is not the same. When it melts all your ice cubes, when you pour it in, it's not the same. And in my opinion, no homemade meal is complete without it. I also feel that no meal is complete unless some animal gave its life to produce it. But that's another story. You got to have sweet tea with the meal. But now, Samantha, where were you born? Michigan, a far northern province, if you've never heard of it, way up there on the Canadian border. And they somehow do not grasp the necessity of tea with a meal, sweet tea. And when we first got married, I'd walk out the door already anticipating supper, because she can cook better than my mama. And I'd say, honey, don't forget to make tea. All I want, I'll make it now. She'd always say she's going to do it in just a minute. When I come home from work, beautiful meal on the table, but guess what? She forgot to make tea. Now this was funny the first few times, but like a decade later, we were still working on trying to get tea for meals. She would then go, when I get home, she'd go make the tea, and we would drink it warm, just fresh. Hadn't developed this flavor. I've told you what I think about fresh tea. So, to avoid strife after that long period, I took it upon myself to make the tea. No longer her job. If the tea was no good, it was my fault. Tea wasn't there, it was my fault. It eliminated a stress point, not by yelling. Remember what I said last week? You can walk in and say, why isn't dinner on the table? Or you can say, honey, anything I can do to help with supper? Vast difference, isn't it? And you still said supper's not ready, but you've added some salt to it. You're making it more appreciable. Now, Rebecca, raise your hand, Rebecca. The birthday girl is our chief tea maker. Samantha no longer has to do it. I no longer have to do it. She's got it down to an art. She can make tea. Another tradition in my childhood was when you're at home and eating supper, the table was cleaned off immediately. The dishes were immediately washed and put away. I mean, within minutes of supper, it was done. You can bear witness. We've gone home. We'll be eating at the table. I'll get up and go to the bathroom and come back, and Mother's taking my plate. It's gone. It's already washed, put away. That has good points and bad points. Perhaps she was watching my third trimester here as well. It not only applied to the sink, it applied to the counter. You didn't just take the dishes and put them on the counter. Even now at our house we do that. You scrape it off and you put it on the counter. But someone else is assigned to wash the dishes. We have a duty roster on the refrigerator. Now that we got older kids, it's not an issue. But boy, it was when it was just us and little babies. It bothered me. She seemed to take the same approach with the dishes that I took with tea. She left them laying in the sink overnight. It developed that nice full aroma for the next day. I just couldn't take that, and so something had to happen. It was my pet peeve. It upset me for a long time. Why didn't she wash the dishes? Notice she walked away. She can't take it no more. My mama always did it. Why can't she do it? I mean, what else does she have to do, right? Care, feeding, nurture, discipline, education of 10 children, that's nothing. She keeps the house right. She makes homemade bread. She does the dirty laundry for 12 people, makes 3 meals a day. She teaches the kids how to read and write and add and subtract and how to love Jesus. Piece of cake. I'm sure glad she doesn't have to work. She should have plenty of energy to clean up the dishes, right? Is no one going to amen? Okay, you got to go on. Now, the rare times I am left alone with the children for a few hours, I almost go out of my mind before she gets home. If the baby's with me, I'll call. She'll pick up, and I'll just stick the phone to the baby, and the baby's, so guess what? She comes home. Saves me. Other things. Back when I had an office, I served a great old big church, had a real nice office. I'd get up in the morning and I'd go to this nice, quiet office, and I would do my prayer and devotions and sermon prep and read. Everything was nice. And I think of Samantha. She's at the house. She's trying to read her Bible with one kid sitting on a knee begging for breakfast, and one on the other knee wanting her to read a book, and one's nursing, and one's crying because he's not nursing. But she's going to do her devos just fine, uninterrupted. And then after I have my time at the church, my quiet time, I'll go out and visit with people who, for the most part, are glad to see me. Not all of them. And we'll talk about the deep things of God, what's going on in the world, maybe have a Coke. And she spends most of her day in a single-syllable conversations about dinosaurs and kittens and Spider-Man, all this stuff. And then I come home. Honey, I'm home, man, I had a hard day. Not really. I knew about these dishes. that was hampering my prayer life, holding a grudge because of stupid dishes. Now, I cannot imagine what hard feelings she had for me. All the things I was not doing. And in the grand scheme of things, I know that the dishes do not matter, but the devil will take a little bitty thing like that and stop your prayers. They won't get past the ceiling. I knew that I couldn't blame her. I mean, she already does the work of 3 people. Not enough money in the world to pay my wife for what she does. So I made a decision. I made a change. She will remember this. I settled in my mind that the dishes were no longer her responsibility. It was mine. I mean, how many things did she do for me? And if they weren't done to my standards, well, that was my problem, because it's mine now. And I did it. Now we have older children. We have that duty list on the refrigerator, and you know what day it is to do your dishes. And if you don't do them right, you get another day. And the next kid gets the day off. So you often see another kid planting dirty dishes after they're done, so that they'll get out of the next day. But do you realize how much stress and strife and grief and anger and anguish came from just the stupid dishes? Or a glass of tea, not to my standards. And it took a decade, that's 10 years, for me to figure that out and get it straightened out. So after that, it was mine. And I mean, that solved a lot of things. This approach solved what could have been a big problem. Now my prayers were unhindered. Now my wife and I went to bed in total agreement every night. Now don't misunderstand. Everything's not been coming up roses since then. We've had our problems. And we've had some long sleepless nights while we work things out, but we never let the sun go down on our differences. That requires early arguments, since the sun goes down about 8 o'clock now. My suggestion to you is to do the same. Look at the stuff that's giving you the hard time with your wife or husband.